Milvrida. She's a CREA, the CREA lead analyst for the Helsinki-based research center CREA. Now, China's National Energy Administration, China's NEA, didn't immediately respond to Reuters for comment. No comment. Shocking. Now, China approved construction of a further 37 gigawatts of coal-fired capacity just last year and 3 times more the year earlier, bringing under construction a total of 88.1 gigawatts of new coal-powered energy. More. It now has 247 gigawatts of coal power under development. Folks, that's enough to supply the whole country of Germany. These are new plants under development, okay? How are you going to make your country carbon neutral if you're developing 247 gigawatts of new coal-fired power plants? A team of central government environmental inspectors delivered a scathing assessment of China's energy regulation, accusing officials of planning failures and focusing too much on guaranteeing energy supply. Now, China's NEA has allowed plants to be built in already polluted regions, while projects in less sensitive coal bases have not yet gone ahead. So that's what they're doing. Yeah, you know what? We're only building in places that are so polluted now, doesn't matter. Have they ever considered there's a thing called wind, okay? Now, China has been criticized for pursuing an energy-intensive post-COVID recovery based on heavy industry and construction. That's according to more and more experts. Now, they say the new plants could end up being heavily indebted and stranded assets. In other words, some of these experts in China are actually saying, well, you know what? There could be a problem here, because if we start building all these plants and then decommission them, we're going to lose money. They're not going to decommission them, folks. You don't plan on building something with the goal of shutting it down in a few years. Nobody does that. Absolutely nobody. Now, Christine Shearer of GEM, that's the U.S. think tank we talked about earlier, said China needs to ensure its short-term development plans align with their long-term climate goals. You think? Ms. Shearer also said, hopefully, as the Chinese government determines its coal power capacity targets for the next 5 years, that's between now and 2025, it will severely restrict, if not end, new coal plants built and accelerate their retirements. Boy, we sure hope so. So let me go ahead and summarize this for you, dear listeners. Trump was the demon because we got out of the Paris Accords. Xi was the hero because he was going to make China neutral by 2060. But China is building virtually all the new coal-fired power plants that are being constructed in the world and accelerating them like crazy. In fact, in 2020, China built or opened the equivalent of one new coal-fired power plant a week. One a week last year. And they're accelerating that for 2021. They're accelerating it even more into the future. Now, since the Paris Agreement, only 2 areas virtually have reduced their coal power output. That's the U.S. and the EU. The EU has reduced their coal power output by 16 gigawatts. That's a bunch, okay? The U.S., the evil U.S., who even got out of the Paris Accords, they've reduced their output by 41 gigawatts. 3 times what the EU reduced theirs by. So we by far have reduced our carbon footprint, have decommissioned coal-fired power plants more than anybody else. No one else is even close. And we're the evil ones. In fact, China, they were at 923 gigawatts, okay? That's where they were in 2019. In 2020, they were at 1,000 gigawatts, okay? And they're building more. 1,000 gigawatts. They're building more. all the time, planning more all the time. Last year, they built one a week, one power plant a week. So let's recap. In 2019, China generated 1,000 gigawatts of electricity via coal. In 2020, China commissioned nearly 40 gigawatts in new plants. Again, about one a week. The rest of the world decreased their carbon footprint, decreased the amount of coal-burning power plants by 17 gigawatts. China has 247 gigawatts in coal-fired power plants planned for the future. The U.S. does have one, by the way. We have one plan for one coal-fired power plant. It's a small, self-sufficient plant that's going to make enough electricity for the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. So it's just a little blip. I mean, they have to have electricity, right? You're in the middle of Alaska, right? I don't think they're going to use solar power in Alaska. They have to have something. Now, Chinese President Xi says China will be carbon neutral by 2060. When finished, China will be generating 1,240 gigawatts of electricity via coal. The U.S. in 2018 generated 747 gigawatts of electricity by all carbon fuels combined: coal, oil, natural gas. And natural gas was the biggest, okay? And natural gas continues to grow a bit. Coal continues to drop. Oil is just a blip anymore. But the United States, who is just the boogeyman when it comes to global warming, according to anyone else, because again, Trump got out of the Paris Accord, is a fraction of what China is. 1,240 gigawatts for coal alone versus 747 gigawatts for the United States for all carbon-based power plants combined. So who's the real boogeyman? Donald Trump for wanting to get out of the Paris Accords? Or President Xi, who wants to stay in the Paris Accords, but is doing absolutely nothing to reduce China's carbon footprint? And that, my friends, is why President Xi Jinping is the boogeyman. Because he says one thing and he does another. He can't be trusted. He's a liar. He's a murderer. And he's a horrible human being. Now, that being said, full disclosure, I'm going to give a little editorial on Chinese manufactured goods, because that's the main reason they want to generate electricity, because they need cheap power for their manufacturing base. China makes a bunch of stuff. I mean, just about everything we open up nowadays says made in China, made in China, made in China. Now, you may think I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm really not, because while I try to buy not just U.S., not just North America, I try to buy products made in the West. And when I say that, I mean the United States, Mexico, Canada, of course, also South America, because they're our neighbors too, the EU especially, Japan, Korea, other Western nations that pay their people fairly and are responsible manufacturers. And they make good stuff too. Now you've heard from me, and everybody thinks, okay, Chinese stuff is cheap, but you get what you pay for. It's garbage, right? Hold on to that thought, because once upon a time, that used to be the case. Friends, I'm here to tell you that's not necessarily the case anymore. Now you're thinking to yourself, what are you doing, Strong? Are you bucking the system? Are you bucking the trend? Are you getting on the Chinese bandwagon? No, I'm not. In fact, I still don't buy Chinese unless there's really no alternative. Now, I mentioned earlier in the podcast that I'm putting together a sandblaster, and I'm getting a parts washer so I can go ahead and clean and refurbish the parts that came off the Jaguar that I'm restoring, the 51 Mark 7. They were purchased, or they were manufactured in China. Now, you think to yourself, well, Strong, why didn't you just buy a U.S.-made one? Because they have U.S.-made parts washers. They have U.S.-made sandblasters, and I could have bought them. but they were about 5 to 6 times the price. And while I haven't looked at the parts washer yet, the sandblaster, it's pretty good stuff. It goes together well. I haven't used it yet because it's not assembled, but I mean, a sandblaster, if you know how they work, it's not, if you have a reliable air source and regulate and dry the air coming into the machine, it's going to work just fine. It's a very simple process. That's why I bought it, because if I had bought a U.S. one, I couldn't afford it. It was out of my price range. And part of this hobby with this car is to not just pay somebody to redo. If I just wanted to pay somebody to redo a car, I'd have written a big check for it, or I probably just would have bought one a whole lot like it, because that would have been cheaper, would have been easier. But that's not what I wanted to do. The goal here was to do as much of the restoration myself as possible. And to do that, you need certain tools. Tools are expensive. And friends, I'm here to tell you, a lot of these Chinese tools, they're a fifth, a tenth the cost of what a Western tool costs. And they're not that bad. Are they as good as a Snap-on? No, they're not. But they're pretty doggone good. They do the job. They don't break, okay? They've really made strides. Now, are they doing this with child labor? Forced slave labor? Labor where they're only paying somebody $1 a day? Yeah, they probably are. And it's government subsidized. These governments run these things, and they dump these on our markets. I know that. I understand that. But I bought it anyway. And the reason I bought it is because if I wanted to do it, this was the only vehicle I had. It was either do it this way or don't do it. Now, why am I even going off onto this? You may think this is an offshoot. You're going down a rabbit hole strong, and I'm not. What I'm getting at is, if you look at a U.S.-made product and compare it to a European product or a Canadian product, in many cases a Mexican product, a European, a Japanese product, they're about the same price. And being a patriot, I'm going to say, okay, this one's $100. The U.S. made one's $100. The foreign made one is $98, $95. I'm going to buy the U.S. made one. Even if quality-wise they're equal, I'm going to buy the U.S. made one. But $150 versus $800, can't afford that. I can't buy an $800 sandblaster. I can't do it. But I can buy one for $170. Okay? And the reason I'm saying this is because Xi is the boogeyman. Part of the reasons why they can make good stuff at a cheap price is because he is repressing his people. He's lying to the G7. He's lying to the world about his carbon footprint. He's building more coal-burning power plants than ever before. And the world needs to get behind one another and call President Xi what he is: an evil dictator, a horrible human being, the biggest threat to the world, the real life boogeyman. Well, that's it. I'm done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address. If you want to get this podcast on a regular basis, the easy way, send me your email address, and I will send you a link via email. Upon publication, you can download it then and listen to it at your leisure. Or if you want to, just go anywhere that you normally get your podcasts. Friends, I'm there. That's it. I'm done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.